as Judge Thokozile Masipa is expected to finalize her judgment on the trial that has lasted over 6 months. Now to our reporter, Griselda Lewis, who's been keeping us up to date from outside the court the last couple of months. Morning, Griselda.
Well, a very good morning to you.
Griselda, I want to start off. Judge Masipa cut straight to the chase yesterday and already ruled out murder, premeditated murder. Are we expecting a shorter day today in court?
Well, that is possible. What we're expecting Judge Thokozile Masipa to do this morning is to continue on giving reasons why she believes that Oscar Pistorius was negligent when he pulled the trigger 4 times, shooting and killing Reeva Steenkamp. You'll recall yesterday she gave us a slight indication of what could possibly be a conviction of culpable homicide for Oscar Pistorius inside the North Gauteng High Court today. Basically, what Judge Thokozile Masipa is saying is that Oscar Pistorius could have used other means before he pulled that trigger. Perhaps he could have gone to the balcony to go and shout for help when he heard the sounds coming from the bathroom door. And also, she asked questions about why Oscar Pistorius shot 4 times. Why didn't he at least shoot once? And also that Oscar Pistorius went to go look for Reeva Steenkamp only after he had pulled that trigger. So really questions arising. What we're looking forward to today is to try and establish whether Oscar Pistorius at all will go to jail. We're looking strictly now at the culpable homicide charges as well, not forgetting the other 3 charges relating to the contravention of the Firearms Control Act.
Now, Griselda, can you just set the scene for us outside court? What is it like with the media and family and Oscar arriving this morning?
Well, certainly there's been quite a media frenzy outside court this morning. As you've rightly pointed out, Oscar Pistorius will know his fate this morning. So the media contingent here behind me is quite strong, and Oscar Pistorius actually arrived just a few minutes ago to a media scrum. That's, of course, before you went on air. And, Barry Steenkamp, June Steenkamp as well, also arriving at court. I'm sure they're quite anxious to know what Judge Masipa's final verdict will be in this matter. You would know that Barry Steenkamp, for example, has not been doing too well, but both he and June Steenkamp really haven't showed any emotion inside court, not even when Judge Thokozile Masipa had ruled out premeditated murder and also murder yesterday. But what we do know is that the Steenkamp family will address the media once Judge Thokozile Masipa is done with the full verdict. Whether Oscar Pistorius' uncle will give out a statement as he usually does, that of course also remains to be seen.
Griselda, just take us inside the court, the mood in court. What did we see from Oscar yesterday, and then Reeva's family, as you mentioned?
Well, Reeva Steenkamp's family not showing much emotion at all, but certainly I did see, Barry Steenkamp. The only emotion or sort of action that I saw him do yesterday is when he leaned forward, and that's about all you got from Barry Steenkamp. You know, in the morning I'd often ask him, "How are you doing, Mr. Steenkamp?" and he'll just say that he is fine. Well, June Steenkamp often just walks past the media, does not say anything, but Oscar Pistorius certainly breaking down several times yesterday as Judge Masipa went through his version of events, and he really sobbed quite strongly, out loudly, when Judge Masipa had spoken about the premeditated murder and the fact that she did not think that Oscar Pistorius had intended to shoot and kill Reeva Steenkamp. So whether that was a sigh of relief on that main charge, I cannot say, but certainly he couldn't contain his emotions yesterday throughout several parts of the verdict.
Griselda, we saw a lot of debating on Twitter yesterday, those being pro and negative. What is it like in front of the court? Are we seeing any Oscar supporters there this morning?
Well, there was always going to be the court of public opinion, and people always have had, their take on what's been happening here in the Oscar Pistorius trial. But certainly what we're getting from law experts is that we've got to thread very carefully in that in this instance, it's only the law that is going to apply here. South Africa doesn't have a jury system, and the only person who's going to make the decision about Oscar Pistorius' fate is Judge Thokozile Masipa, together with her assessors, taking into account how she interprets the evidence that was led inside this court. So, we had a lot of, negativity on Twitter. Some legal experts as well, the legal fraternity, questioning Judge Thokozile Masipa on whether she was correct to say that Oscar Pistorius did not anticipate that when he pulled the trigger, he would have killed someone behind that door. So a lot of criticism coming from the legal fraternity saying that Oscar Pistorius, when he went to go and arm himself, he certainly knew that if he pulled that trigger. Let me just turn towards my left. I'm just being alerted that something is taking place here at the moment. As you can see, there's Oscar Pistorius' father once again arriving at court. He was not here yesterday. He's arriving on the final day of the verdict to hear his son's fate. And certainly we've heard during the course of this trial as well about an estranged relationship between Oscar Pistorius and his father, but his father is here today. We'll try and certainly see if we can't have a word with him after this, after Judge Masipa has finished handing down her verdict, but certainly very interesting to see him here on this final day as well. How the Pistorius family will react. You would know that Judge Masipa has slightly given an indication towards the end of the court day yesterday when she said that Oscar Pistorius, as you did point out, was negligent when he pulled that trigger. So when Judge Masipa, we're expecting her to start on that this morning, on whether Oscar Pistorius is guilty or not on culpable homicide. So certainly that remains to be seen. And, the other charges as well, we must not forget that she is still yet to pronounce on the other charges relating to an incident that allegedly happened at an upmarket restaurant in Melrose Arc, as well as allegations that Oscar Pistorius had shot through a sunroof, and the allegations of illegal or ammunition that was found in his safe at his Pretoria home at the crime scene. So that remains to be seen what happens at 9:30 this morning. Certainly everybody is waiting to see how the curtain will fall on Oscar Pistorius today.
Well, Chrisella, thank you so much for joining us this morning, keeping us up to date there from outside court, where Judge Thokozile Masipa is expected to deliver her final judgment today. You can follow Chrisella on Twitter, #SABC News, for all the latest regarding the Oscar Pistorius trial today. Now, Judge Thokozile Masipa found that the state had failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Pistorius had intentionally murdered the girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. There has been mixed reactions after the pronouncement that Pistorius could not be found guilty of murder. She, however, found that Pistorius had acted negligently when he shot and killed the 29-year-old model at his home on Valentine's Day last year. To unpack more of these legal matters, here with us in studio, we are again joined by Bernard Hortz, legal expert and head of the Worksman's Attorneys Business Crime and Forensics Practice. Morning, Bernard. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Katrine. Thank you.
You've been here since the start of the trial, and now we're here finally nearing the end. Tell us, as a legal expert, was it surprising yesterday?
Katrine, I think most of us are surprised. When I talk about most of us, I'm talking about from the legal fraternity, because the issue, I think we need to be clear. Let's dispel the notion of premeditated murder, dolus directus. I do not think that the state proved, remember, beyond reasonable doubt is the scale. I do not think that the state proved beyond reasonable doubt that Oscar intended to murder Riva Steenkamp. That's step number one. But step number two, if you remember the video footage of Oscar at the shooting range with that watermelon, do you remember when we saw him shoot and we saw the devastating effect that the bullet had on that watermelon? Now you have a man who's used to using his firearm. He understands the effect of what will happen when he shoots his firearm. Now we go to dolus directus. It doesn't matter who was standing behind that door. He knew, he foresaw that if he were to shoot 4 shots through that door, and he knows his own bathroom, he knows what the layout of his own bathroom is, he ought to have foreseen that shooting 4 times behind that door, the person who was behind that door, there would be a devastating effect by firing his firearm 4 times through that door. That's dolus eventualis. Now, so there's a little bit of confusion, but the judge has ruled that out, and the judge has said he was negligent to shoot. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. He was negligent to do that. So I think from a legal perspective, I think a lot of us are confused. However, we must remember we are armchairs. We are armchair observers. The judge is the one who's heard every bit of evidence, and it's up to her to interpret that evidence, come out with a verdict, and perhaps we might see an appeal.
Not guilty of premeditated murder. That's what we were told yesterday. So next up, it's culpable homicide. Can you just go into that a bit and tell us what are the charges relating to culpable homicide, and are we likely to see that?
Well, not guilty of premeditated murder. That's what we call dolus directus. I hatched a plan to do this, I did it. Not guilty of that. Never ever said he should be guilty of that because it was very difficult for the state to prove that. But dolus eventualis, still murder. That's where the confusion arises. That's the foreseeability of what my actions are going to do, and I nevertheless go ahead and commit those acts. The judge has found him not guilty of dolus eventualis. We're now looking at culpable homicide, negligent to do what I did. I think that what the judge is saying, she has found his testimony to be less than acceptable in a number of respects. She's found him to have been negligent in the way that he reacted. She should have done other things. So I think we may be looking at a conviction on culpable homicide, the negligent discharge of his firearm, which had the effect of causing the death of Reba Steenkamp.
Now, the state did not prove beyond reasonable doubt that Pistorius intended to kill Reba. What was lacking in the evidence then?
I don't think from day one were we aware of any evidence that the state had to be able to prove that because of something that happened between Oscar Pistorius and the late Reba Steenkamp, he had hatched a plan to murder her that evening. That evidence has never been there. It would have been nice had the evidence been there, but the evidence has never been there. So I think what the state really was going on was you said it was an intruder. You said that you acted in self-defense. We believe something different. We heard the evidence. We heard the evidence of neighbors saying they heard screams. We heard the evidence of the improbability of the version, moving fans. Why did you not look next to you to see if the late Reba Steenkamp was there? Why didn't you do all of these things? The state was relying, I believe, on the fact of dolus eventualis. Notwithstanding all of that, you made a conscious decision to fire your gun through that door 4 times, and you ought to have known that whoever was on the other side would have been harmed in a deadly way.
And just to clarify, could a different judge have made a difference?
We're up to, you see, we've got to look at the law, the evidence, and obviously the human factor. Every single person, and now we're talking about lawyers, but every single person considers evidence in a different way, weighs things up in a different way, and that's why we have courts of appeal, because the test is on appeal. Could another court reasonably possibly come to a different conclusion based on the same evidence? And that's really what an appeal is all about.
Now, there's a word on the street is that the state is devastated after yesterday's findings. Are we seeing an appeal after this?
Well, I would imagine that the state would be concerned. I would imagine that the state would want to appeal. And as I say, the test is going to be, bearing in mind, we don't have a retrial. There's no more witnesses standing in witness boxes. The appeal court simply looks at the evidence, the transcript of evidence, listens to the argument from the state side and from the defense's side, and the appeal court will then make its ruling.
So Oscar Pistorius, should he be relieved after yesterday?
Let me say this to you. On culpable homicide, if he's convicted on culpable homicide, it does not necessarily mean that there will be no jail time. It's just the extent of the jail time that may vary. So I think he should be relieved that he hasn't been convicted of dolus eventualis. I think yes. But I think we're going to have to wait and see what Judge Masipa does on her findings today and what the sentence may be.
Well, Bernard, thank you so much for joining us and joining us throughout the trial on the Oscar Pistorius murder trial. Our legal expert from Worksman's Attorneys, Bernard Hortz. Let's just now take a look at what's been happening on social media regarding the Oscar Pistorius trial. Oscar Pistorius falling leaves legal, #expert, #shock. There you've got all of the Oscar Pistorius tweets this morning, the hashtags to follow. Later on in the show, we'll also look at some social media stats to see what's been happening. Strange how those that disagree with the Oscar verdict have started attacking judges' integrity and qualifications. What exactly is your intention with the bullets that shatter on impact? Oscar judgment, Oscar trial. Of course, one of the biggest stories globally on social media. Simply, just as those have their opinion that Oscar is guilty, other people might too have their opinion that he is innocent. In his version, Oscar could easily have spoken to Reva. Both slipped past the bathroom, gone downstairs and called for why shoot at the toilet. After all these questions, everybody is a lawyer these days on social media, as well as we've been seeing throughout the duration of the trial. Well, let's just now take a look at some other news and some front pages from around the globe this morning. Well, of course, it's Oscar Pistorius is one of the biggest stories globally at the moment. There you have the Financial Times with a picture of assaulting Pistorius in court yesterday. Down under, the Australian reporting on the latest on the US war against terror. President Barack Obama's plan to expand the military fight against Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria. Then the Miami Herald remembering the 13th anniversary